Hello and welcome to Neuroshambles, the podcast that aims to shine a light into some of the murkier corners of what it's like to parent neurodivergent kids. I'm Mark Allen, and every episode I'm going to be swapping stories with my guests about some of the frankly ludicrous nonsense we have to deal with on a daily basis. So, if you're anything like me and you're feeling frazzled, overwhelmed, and pretty much an outcast from polite society, join me. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Neuroshambles. Welcome back, Neuroshamblers. Thanks for coming. We got a rammed show for you this week where we're going to be meeting another guest. And the topic of the week this week is special interests, which I've got lots to say on, as has our guest. We're also going to be towards the end looking at the usual favourites, neurodiversity champions, tiny wins. We've got some cracking what the flip moments, and there's a new section just this 1 week only is Poetry Corner, where I won't spoil the surprise for you, but you can almost certainly guess what that is already. So yeah, I'll stop wittering on and let's just smash on with it, shall we?
Meet the guest.
So our guest for this week is Liam Mullone, who I have known quite a long time, actually. We sort of lost contact for a while. So hello, Liam. First of all, welcome.
Hello.
I knew Liam because we used to do stand-up comedy together a long old time ago, sort of back in the noughties, wasn't it?
Yes.
And
The old Queen's Head.
We've done many a gig, and obviously we sort of moved to totally separate parts of the country, and I'm not doing stand-up anymore, and you're doing bits of stand-up. Is that right?
I'm booking gigs around here.
Okay.
But yes, I realised that if you move to Devon, there's about 3 gigs you can do, and you can do them once a year.
So I obviously, a mutual friend of ours then mentioned that you had kids with additional needs, and I was like, great.
Was that their actual words, or was it? Oh, you should talk to Liam Malone. His kids are total.
No, he didn't say that because that would make him a monster.
Talk to him. His kids are insane.
Yeah, something like that. So then I reached out to you, and and I thought we'd have a lot to talk about, and so here we are. Which kind of leads us into you telling us a little bit about your setup there. How many kids have you got, and what needs have they got?
Well, I'll just start with this because before I forget all about it, apparently I am autistic myself. ADHD, demand avoidance, all sorts of things, which my wife likes to diagnose. In fact, she diagnoses me as something extra every day. But it was
However,
mostly...
wait. Is it worth us pointing out that she is professionally qualified to diagnose you? She's not just shooting in the dark.
She is professionally qualified to diagnose people, but maybe not quite as much as she does. In my case.
You give her a lot of fodder, to be fair.
I'm not sure that congenitally annoying is a proper diagnosis.
No, it's not.
But yes, I realised through my because I have twins.
Okay.
Twin boys, now 12.
12.
And they both have a certain amount of special needs. But it was from the first one. I'll call them A and B. It was through twin A, the one that's 2 seconds older, that I, because people were going, oh, he's got definite needs in this area and this and that and the other. And I said, he's not doing anything I didn't do, so he must be normal. And everyone said, no, that means that you're also.
A tale as old as time.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is twin A? Is he diagnosed?
He has his EHCP, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And what is that? Autism?
Autism, yes. Probably various other things, but we didn't really take it any further. His autism isn't particularly problematic. He has a lot of echolalia, so he will keep saying the same thing twice.
Right. Okay.
He's very fixated on his own interests, but he And this is something I've realised through home education. He does have a whole layer underneath that he just doesn't show unless you prise it out of him. And the other one is just anxious about everything all the time.
Right. Is he
Um,
diagnosed? Twin B, I presume.
he's not. His is in the works. It
Right.
doesn't
Okay.
really matter anymore because we have deregistered them. So there's nothing to be gained by getting them certification. It's
Is
just
your plan to get a diagnosis for Twin B, or is it just
we
sort
are
of?
because we might need him. I can't think of anything that'll come from it except maybe he'll get an extra half an hour in an exam. But
Yeah, but I guess it helps contextualize him to other people. Not for you guys, because you know him and you
yes,
know how to parent him, and I've found from my lot that the style of parenting for one should just be applied to all of them, and it makes it easier. I mean, yeah, it's to be as clear as possible and to set expectations in advance, and there's all of those different parenting strategies. Low demand if possible. That can just apply to anyone. I do it with grown-ups as well. It's fine.
yes, yes.
And so you've got a neurotypical as well, right?
I have a daughter, yes, and she
Sorry, I make it
is.
sound like a pet.
Yeah, made it sound like Tamagotchi.
Yeah.
Yes, I press the feed button at regular intervals with the daughter, and she responds very well.
This one cleans up after herself.
No, she's a delight. She's very, very normal, and it's like she's got all the nice things about me, and obviously she's got things about her mother as well. But
Mhm.
who cares about that? She's got the nice things about me without all the insaneness.
What's the topic of the week?
So let's crack on with the actual topic of the week, because I'm quite keen to do this. The topic of this week is going to be special interests, which you've already kind of launched into saying that Twin A quite has an obsession with special interests. It's something that I've found with mine as well, that they kind of latch onto a thing that they then become kind of obsessed about and need to learn loads and loads about it, and then need to talk about it a lot. Is that similar to your lot?
Yes, yes, they have to talk about it all the time.
And is it always been the same one, same special interest, or have they sort of flitted between different ones?
No, it's changed. It's always been absolutely locked on to when they were really young, it was um it was Lightning McQueen and all the cars in the Cars series
Right, is that both
because
of them?
yes, I
And had
think both of them.
and do you think that influenced you becoming a car dealer?
Don't think so. That's the thing, actually. I wish their special interests was cars, because there's an autistic kid who's 18 down the road,
Yeah.
and he's obsessed with cars, and so I hired him to like change wheels and change tires and
Oh, excellent.
uh, do do underspray for me, so I could help him out a bit. Um, and like he was because I bought this stupid car. I bought this Nissan Skyline.
Right.
Um, Which is like the crown jewels of Japanese cars, Japanese imports. But mine have seen so many cars at this point, they don't give a shit. They just could not care
Their
less.
car
But
blindness.
then out of the blue, I got a call from the guy, the kid down the road. He's like, "You got a Skyline? Can I come and see it? Can I rev the engine? Can I look at the engine? Can I breathe in the exhaust pipe?" And yeah, come round any time.
You did say he was 18, didn't you?
Yeah.
His voice is not broken yet.
He had a flutter of childish abandon when he was like, "Oh, can I come and touch the Skyline?" "Yes, please do, because my kids don't give a fuck."
so early days it was Lightning McQueen and the Cars movie, and they both latched onto the same one.
They were both in the Lightning McQueen, and Twin B was always into the peripheral characters. Like, I want to find a really obscure character that's my character, and Twin A was like, I'm just into Lightning
Yeah.
McQueen, and they wanted to I think there's a strong urge to collect and acquire. with autistic kids,
Yes,
and so they
definitely.
wanted
Hmm.
to. So they're
Hmm.
just a dream for the manufacturing industry that goes along any Disney Pixar production, where they've brought out
Yes.
500 different you know um, die-cast cars, and they just have to have all of them.
Yeah. They are a merch magnet, aren't they?
And it was the same later on. A friend introduced them to Thomas the Tank Engine, and they were like, "Oh my god!" And there's so many bloody
There
engines.
are. They're just cranking them
There's
out now, aren't they?
so many. There's like 300 of the fuckers, and it's like,
So
oh
that was the next. Was that the next special interest?
yeah. But that's what led into the whole YouTubing, because Twin A saw a YouTube of somebody just getting their collection of engines and just naming them all, and it went on for about 2 hours. It was like, and this is Clarabelle, and this is Rosalind, and this is this is Spencer, and this is Dark Spencer,
There is
and
not a
this
Dark
is
Spencer.
Green Spencer. There is. There's like, if ever there's an episode where one of them gets covered in honey or something, there's like, this is Honey Spencer.
I I thought it was like Dark Brandon or something.
Oh, what, like the evil opposite. There well probably is now. There's probably a sort of Thomas into the Cyberverse where they meets his evil.
Yeah.
Anyway, he wants to, yeah, but he was like, I've got more engines than him. I want to do a film like that. So his first YouTube was him pointing out all his engines, and he's never looked back. He's obsessed with YouTube.
And it's not. He says he moved on from the tank engines now.
Yes, he's now into murder drones, and
Hang on,
which is
you're gonna have to back up there a little bit. explain murder drones to me.
murder. Yeah, I thought, God, murder drones. So I looked into it myself. I watched an episode. It is just a kid's cartoon.
Okay, not actual like
Yes.
assault drones.
It's about these robots who were like, they were created by humans, and they were made to terraform a planet.
Hmm.
But then the humans cracked the planet open or something. They did something wrong, and they killed all the humans. So now there's only the robots left. So the robots have formed their own
So
society.
this is a series about murder drones, and he's
Yeah.
he's
And they're
really
like, well,
into
we can't reclaim this planet now that the robots have got it. So let's send these drones to kill them off.
Are there lots of different types of drone and lots of different kind of sort of nuances?
There's all different characters, and he has spent every penny he gets. He is, because like the original characters, he has to find on eBay, and they have to get sent from. It's not such a big thing that there's factories in China churning them out yet, like there is with all their Mario characters that they're
Yeah.
also into.
Hmm.
But so he has to order them like originals from America and pay masses of postage and customs and everything. So he's paying like £46 a time for a plushie.
Wowzers.
Uh, so it's like, he'll get some birthday money, or he'll do some jobs, and he'll finally get enough cash, and then he just goes on a.
A murder drone spree. It's quite interesting how intensely these special interests kind of manifest itself. Which I've so Jay's first ever special interest really was Pokemon. I don't know if yours have ever been into Pokemon, but Pokemon is just like absolutely geared up for autistics. The guy who invented Pokemon is autistic, so all of those little details and this kind of the incredibly there's like thousands upon thousands of different types of Pokemon and different evolves, and there's different islands and different folklores, and it's really really involved. And obviously I kind of first looked at it and thought there was a few of them, and Jay just got so into it. We bought him the Pokemon encyclopedia, and he just
Yes.
memorized the whole lot. Like it's incredible. His memory for all of this kind of stuff is incredible, and he got really into it, and he was really he really enjoyed that kind of thing. And then quite suddenly he's just sort of went, nah, it's not what I'm into anymore.
Yeah.
So Greek mythology became his new obsession, and he got really into that and learning about it and memorizing all of the different Greek gods and all of the stories around the Greek gods in incredible detail. And Demeter is his favorite Greek god. He got very obsessed with that. And
Demeter.
yes,
Is that the
yeah,
god of the harvests?
well done. Yeah, you know your classics.
Hmm.
So yeah, for some reason he loved Demeter, and
That's a
that
strange one for a boy to go for.
well, yeah, he's not the most conventional character. So he was loving the Greek mythology, and so we thought, and he decided that he wanted to to visit Greece on holiday. That became an obsession. So we
Hmm.
just did that this year. It was like, fine. Yeah. I mean, it would have been worse if he'd have said, I'm really obsessed with Birmingham. We'd have to go there on a
Yes.
holiday. So at least it was someone's like, yeah, I could definitely
I'm
stomach that.
obsessed with hookers. Can we go to Amsterdam?
So yeah, that is a concern of mine. Is that one day what if his special interest is something really sordid? Yeah, I don't want to. Let's not go there.
Well, it will be.
Um,
That's just called adolescence.
yeah, it's true. So we went to Greece on holiday because of Jay's obsession. But the thing
Hmm.
is, you sort of, it's like, well, let's look at the birthplace of Zeus. It's just a field. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
there. Do you know what I mean? It's just a field. Because we were
Yeah.
in Crete and apparently Zeus was born there, so it wasn't anything really
Oh, okay.
tangible that we could go to. So which is fine.
Also, Greece. I mean, Greece. I love Greece dearly, but Greece being Greece, you'll be like, and this is the birthplace of Zeus, and it's full of discarded building equipment and half a bag of concrete and some
Yes, it
pipe
was
work.
one of Hephaestus's originals.
And there's some villas that haven't got roofs on because they don't have to pay tax on them till they're finished,
No,
so they're
that's where
never
you make it
finished.
up. You're just saying that Zeus set forth a thunderbolt because he was cross that they wouldn't donate a cow. Yeah, I mean, in terms of special interests, from Jay's perspective, Greece was pretty palatable. Pokemon was it got a little bit obsessive when he started to identify too much with the characters. So there were a couple of times where when he was feeling dysregulated, he would identify as the characters to sort of regulate himself, I guess. So there was a time at school where people were picking on him, and he basically curled into a ball, and I think he was being Bulbasaur or something, to try and
Oh,
protect himself.
okay.
So he was imagining that he was, which is sort of heartbreaking to think of him dealing with light bullying by curling into a ball and hoping that that would resolve the issue, because you're just pouring petrol on that fire, aren't you? And he
Right.
tried to do, yeah, he was sort of role playing a bit as a Pokemon. This is very early on in his school career. And there was also the time where he actually, one of the first times we realized that there was something other going on, something neuro different about him, was when he met someone like a friend's kid, and we're like, you're the same age, you'll get on, right? And he obviously didn't know how to behave and how to handle this, so he basically crouched down and pretended to be a Pokemon
Right.
and was sort of running around on all fours, and it was like, I see, this is there's something else going on here, isn't there? This is not your typical reaction to a new playmate.
No.
As this kid's just stood there going, who the fuck is this? What do you mean, who the fuck is this? It's Bulbasaur, right? Come on, dude. Keep up. What's quite interesting is how much of their special interests you end up kind of picking up, right? And subsuming. Well, certainly from my perspective, I've got much more in-depth knowledge of Greek mythology now. My knowledge of
Right.
Pokemons is way above what it should be in any healthy adult. And but do you find the same with murder drones?
Um, yeah, I probably not really because I kind of he's old enough to do his own thing and I doesn't need my input anymore. Whereas before, when it was like, let's watch that Thomas film for the 500th time, it was like, okay, that's going to be on in the background. I am going to absorb it, whether I like it or not. Whereas now, it's just him on his computer. So,
I like to think that there will be one day we'll be sat in a pub quiz, and the specialist round will be like on Pokemon or on Thomas the Tank Engine or on Greek mythology, and be like, "Stand back, guys! I got this." So one of the joys, I think, of having children with special interests, I don't know if you've encountered this, is when they meet someone with the same special interest. Because Jay, again, in particular, finds it so difficult to kind of he finds communication very difficult. He finds socialization very, very difficult. So there are occasions where he'll meet someone with a similar special interest and they'll just connect. And this happened relatively recently where Jay, we went to an event and Jay met someone else who is massively into Greek mythology, and it was just a joy. They just lit up and they both just started talking to each other, and it was so lovely. They were like firing like obscure questions at each other and answering it, and then when one would answer that, they'd sort of be sort of giving a little nod of approval because they knew something really obscure. Shout out to Ash,
yes.
who is the other person that is obsessed with Greek mythology. Because what was really lovely is that um, I overheard Ash saying, "Oh yeah, this kid's really cool." It's like I've never heard that said about Jay in my life. So it was really lovely to hear that.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's always quite nice. It's very rare, obviously.
Yes.
Um, and it's much more often that I will be cringing as he's firing questions at some poor kid about what Hephaestus's inventions were. But
Right.
it's when it works, it's really lovely to hear. Um,
Yes.
and I think Otto
Um,
Otto. Sorry, carry on.
well, I was just going to say, not so long ago, Twin A went to a Comic Con and he wasn't sure what to expect from it because he
Right.
hadn't been to one for since he was 4, I think.
Hmm.
Um, but then he met a girl who was having the same kind of problems he was at school, and she was dressed as a murder drone. And it was like, oh my god! And yeah, they were
That's
complete
incredible.
soulmates.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's like,
amazing.
oh god, I could have, because mine don't really like dressing up because they're like, I'm
Yeah.
not being me, I'm being, what am I right now?
Hmm.
Um, but he was like, oh, I could have come as a murder drone. I'll come as a murder drone next time, and it just made it. It opened up a whole world, I think, that he could.
That's amazing.
It's
You,
not
did you did
permanent
you
if you dress as something.
did you go with him?
I wasn't there. No, this was reported
Oh,
back to me by his mother. But
that is hilarious though. Where I can imagine him seeing them across across the hall and going, "Oh my god!" Yeah, that sounds amazing. That's Twin B has a special interest as well, doesn't he?
yes, and he's this week he's made a friend. He's made a friend at because they go, part of their home ed is going to parkour class
Oh,
where they
wicked.
basically just jump from one thing to another. And he met a girl there who's very much like him, just got all the same kind of anxieties and has
Yeah,
just come out of school, same as he has. So he just really looks forward to seeing her. And yeah, but his special interest is roller coasters, and he hasn't met another kid yet who's
that's
obsessed with
quite
roller
cool.
coasters. But I'm sure there are plenty of them out there.
Is this just sort of learning about them, or is this actually going on
Oh,
them?
he will just there's one theme park in Devon, and it's called Creeley Adventure Park, and it's pretty bloody tame, right? And it's got a roller coaster that's the most confused roller coaster because it used to be called it had a Spanish name that didn't even mean anything, and it translated to the crazy pill. So I thought, well, what does that even mean? The crazy pill. But they did it. They did the whole thing in hacienda style, and then somebody thought, well, that's not very relevant to Devon, so they turned it into like a Roman themed roller coaster, because then they could kind of keep the hacienda style, villa style. It kind of worked, but nobody thought, hang on, the Romans didn't have trains, did they? So the whole thing is just mad. It doesn't make any sense. And every time I say, just that roller coaster, mate, doesn't make any sense. And they'll go on, yes, well, you say that, but it's interesting because blah, 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 blah. Every time they change something at Creeley Adventure Park, he is aware. Like if they change the font that they're using on their signposts, he wants to talk about that.
So, in terms of the roller coaster special interest, I presume that Creeley was the gateway coaster.
Yeah.
Has that sort of blossomed into just a wider appreciation for coasters?
Well, what's quite nice is he's absolutely determined that when he leaves education, he's going to work his way up to being the manager of Creeley. So he hasn't set his sights too high. He hasn't. He doesn't imagine himself running Alton Towers or Chessington World of Adventures. It's just Creeley. But
So
if he ever gets an interview for Creeley, he's going to just do their head in because he's going to know far more about Creeley than they do.
so does this interest kind of, is he interested in the mechanics of roller coasters and how they're built and that kind of thing?
Yeah, he's interested in the names, like that's a double inversion and that's a triple flanged metal with wood struts and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I have found, certainly from my own interactions with kids with special interests, is that he just needs to talk about it.
Yes.
He just has to get it out. This is what happens with Jay, in particular, is that he's waiting for me to stop talking so he can then talk about his
Yes.
thing. So I already know when he's not listening to what I'm saying because he's thinking about what he needs to tell me, and he'll just then launch into it. Very often he'll just interrupt me and be like, "Look, Jay, I'm just asking you about your homework. I know that that's not your priority right now, but can we focus on that? And then you can talk at me about what you're talking about."
Oh god, yeah, no, Twin Bee is like, we're trying to get him to bed and he's been talking non-stop for 3/4 of an hour. And we're like, okay, that's great. Can you go to bed now? He's like, can I just tell you one more thing? And they'll say, okay, just one more thing. And then when he's got that, he'll be like, okay, two more things. No, one more thing.
I know, but and they want to share, and it's very sweet, and I get
But
it,
it
but
must be,
it
it
is
must be, he
exhausting.
knows he's told us 5 times before. He knows we're not taking it in. He knows our interest in it is minimal to say the least, but he's like,
Maybe the fact you're taking it in is why he's insisting on telling you again. If you showed some bloody interest, Liam, maybe he wouldn't be repeating himself. The absolute pinnacle of special interest happened last school year when Jay's class did a whole term on Greek mythology.
oh,
And
wow.
it was like, yes, glory days, because Jay was absolutely
So
the
he was
king
like
of
to
the
the teacher,
class.
you can just go and have a fag in the staff room if you want. I've got this.
The teacher was basically saying he's been really helpful because he's been correcting me throughout class. It's like, yeah, I can bet it, because he just like launches into it. But he was so engaged with that, and it was really nice. Obviously, he's engaged because he's got a special interest in it. So he was really like, all of the homework to do with that he did without any complaints at all, and he'd be doing extra stuff. So that was really lovely. That was really nice. Whereas, his latest obsession is with Zelda,
Right.
the Switch open world game on the Switch, which he's really obsessed about, and again he has to just talk at me about. Now, kind of selfishly, that's quite a fun thing for him to be obsessed by, because I quite like Zelda as well. I pretended
Yes.
to kind of get into it just because it was important for me to know what he was interested in. But really, I kind of wanted to play it, and I'll be honest, that Zelda and the world of Zelda and his special interest in Zelda has massively helped our relationship.
Okay.
Because because he uh, more from he more from his perception of me, because I know about Zelda because I've played it now, so that we have something to discuss. He actually sees me as having value. So he sees me as having some sense of worth because I know things in Zelda, whereas like anything
Right.
else that I've got to offer in the world is trivial. He's not interested in that. So he will ask me things about Zelda, and he'll be really itching to share things, and that's really lovely that he'll come
Yes.
and seek me out, because generally he doesn't really pay me that much attention around the house, unless he really wants to talk, and I can tell when he needs to get something off his chest, because he starts kind of fidgeting and then trying to find some time to talk to me. And we've had to ban him talking about Zelda in front of the other two, because they're just like, I'm so bored of Zelda,
Oh
stop
god,
talking
yeah,
about
no,
it.
we have to ban Twin B talking about theme parks on long car journeys because it
Oh
just
yeah.
becomes you just want to drive into oncoming traffic after a while.
Have you tried sort of saying, okay, we can talk about it, you got a minute? That
Oh
works really
yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. But he would never accept a minute. He'd be like, I can't do it in a minute.
Okay. Well, then you could give him a minute and a half or whatever. But it's that works quite well with Jay. I've always found as well, um, and again, particularly with Zelda, but with other things as well. There have been times where I've been able to use that in my favor enormously, um, because, for example, if he's dysregulated, which happens a lot if we're in public and he's getting particularly frustrated about something, particularly if we're in a queue for something, because he's a terrible queuer. He can't stand being in queues, and he just like fidgets and he gets really anxious. Not anxious, he just gets angry.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that if I start talking to him about Zelda, all of that melts away. He'll just like forget where he is. He'll just zone in on this, and we can have this really intense discussion about something to do with Zelda and about a silver bokoblin camp near Hateno village or something, and he will just be transported into that, and it will totally regulate him. And that's so I've used that to my benefit a lot of times.
Hmm.
um
Yes.
when we were driving in Greece, and we were going to somewhere, it was like 2 hours away, and he's not great in long car journeys, he gets really frustrated. But then I remembered that on my phone I got Mythos, which is the Stephen Fry narrating his kind of telling of
Oh
all of
yeah, yeah,
Greek
yeah.
mythology. It's
Yes.
15 hours. I was like, we're quids in here. This is going to be easy, because he just
Yes.
listened to that and he was absolutely fine. So I find that useful. I don't know if you find a kind of a similar use to their intense special interests.
Yeah, well, I certainly won't be able to buy a CD of someone talking about roller coasters or murder drones for 15 minutes. It
No,
was
true.
easy. They do quite like that generally.
What I'm quite interested in as well is sometimes he'll because again, Jay will have no appreciation for the fact that I don't have time to talk about something at that moment. I could be, like, and it's very often when I'm cooking Sunday dinner, and I've got I've got Sunday dinner is a very involved process. There's lots of different moving parts, and I'm trying to
Right.
coordinate. Right about then, he decides he wants to talk at me about Zelda or something.
Yeah.
Um, and
My,
I have actually said, while he's talking, I've actually said, I cannot listen to you right now. Please stop talking. And then he carries on, and I'm like, please stop talking. Please stop talking. Please stop talking. And then once he went, I don't need you to listen. I just need to say it. I was like, oh, fine. In which case, crack on. It's just like
yes.
having Radio 4 in the background.
Yes. Mine want to start a very involved conversation just as I'm trying to back out the drive. and
Oh, you got to concentrate.
we've got the most difficult drive because it was made for a horse and cart, and it's really bloody narrow, and you can't. It's quite a busy road outside, and you can't see it. And
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you've got a car that's got no back camera, it's particularly difficult. And that is the exact point where Twin B especially will go, Dad, you know the Sooty's Magic Bus at Creeley?
Yeah, not right now. Not right now, son.
The mistake I make is trying to engage and thinking, oh, I know a bit about this, going, oh, is that a bit like so and so? And then they'll go, no, what that was, and then you've got another 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah, I've had that before. No, but I get it that the response is like I'm a fucking idiot. Like, like, really? Do you genuinely believe that that was a gorgon?
Yeah,
like,
I don't mind if they think I'm an idiot. It's just the fact that I've
I
given
don't
them
know.
yet another jumping off point that they would have
Yeah, that is true.
whereas otherwise they would have just come to a natural finish and left the room.
That's a common misconception about coasters, Daddy, and I'm going to now regale you with other tales. Now, Otto has now started having his own special interest, and that's quite interesting because he's doing it for a different reason, I think. So his special interest at the moment is football. He's got
Yeah,
obsessed with football. He's never shown any interest in football at all. Now, I'm a big football fan. I've been a football fan all my life. Like my whole family is surrounded with it. So, in a way, in a way, that's my special interest, and he's encroaching on it. And he wants to talk to me about football all the time. And I think the reason that he does that, I think he's very socially aware, Otto, and he's
yes,
very aware that he wants to fit in. And I
yes,
think at school, a lot of kids talk about football. So
yes,
he, I think, has latched onto this and gone, if I have that as my special interest, I will always have a group of people to play with at lunchtime. I'll have stuff that I can talk to them about without having to really know the rules of social interaction. So it's actually quite smart, I think.
yes, yes.
So he is now obsessed with it, and he wants to watch Match of the Day over and over again.
Right.
And he wants to, and he fires questions at me about like, did you how do you know the Fulham score? It's like I don't really care about. No,
Yeah.
I mean I do, but it's not really anything to talk about. But he just
And
sort of
you need to
fires these
tell them you
questions at
don't
me.
need to know what happened in the game. You just need to know the tropes. You just need to go in at school and say, "Oh, the whole back line collapsed, didn't it?" And someone will go, "Yeah."
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
What were they doing up front? There was no communication.
The detail genuinely is important to him, though. It's quite interesting that he is like, he's becoming a football fan, and I watch it. Like me and football, it's a bit of a kind of a guilty pleasure in my house. Is that I have to go and take the iPad and squirrel myself away from everyone else if I want to watch a game. And now he started finding me and watching the game with me, and then just firing loads of questions. And especially if my team aren't doing very well, I'm not that amenable to listening to this to these questions. So I get a
Right.
little bit
Yeah.
frustrated.
Why is your team shit, Dad?
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm going to be an Arsenal fan, Daddy. Don't do that. I mean, like for a number of reasons, but don't like we're in Brighton. Brighton are actually doing well for like the first time in well, pretty much ever. So be a Brighton
Yes.
fan. But anyway, that's not at least he's showing an interest, and that's good. And I'm actually I'm quite pleased that he's got that social crutch that he can use, because I think it's important to him, and I think it will become increasingly important to him over time, because I've started to suspect that that's how a lot of adult males basically communicate socially.
Yeah.
Uh, by having this intense special interest in something, like I can go and I could have an entire conversation with someone about football for a whole evening and never know their name, never know anything about them, and get on really well with them. It's like, yeah, we've just filled time there. We've done conversation, haven't we?
Yeah.
Tick that off. So
I couldn't do that.
no, but I mean, you probably have other things. You could probably talk cars, for example, and other people could do that. So I think we all, as humans, need this sort of something that we could that sort of makes social interaction easier. And the problem is with some of Jay's special interests, and sounds like Twin B's special interests, they're too niche to be of any value in real life, unless you strike that magic moment where they meet someone else, and and
Well,
then
Twin B, it does genuinely want to, work in a theme park, and there is a course now in theme park management, because of course there's a course in everything.
yeah, of
So
course,
he does kind of have a direction. Whereas Murder Drones, no, but at the same time, Twin A is doing, he's worked out for himself the rules of building an online audience, and
yeah,
he's
which
been
is
he's been
yeah,
doing it since he was 8. So
which is super impressive.
yeah,
He just needs to hold fire, well, until he's legit, and then he's going to take off. That's like, yeah, that is genuinely impressive.
and it's
And the
quite funny because he's got, he set up a buy me a coffee thing, and so
yeah,
he actually made enough money. He made like 30 quid one week. So we were like, "Can you do your jobs for your pocket money, Twin B?" And he was like, "Sorry, Twin A, he is." And he was like, "I don't need to. I've got enough cash." So I was like,
oh
"You
my god,
still have to do your bloody jobs.
I could buy you, Daddy.
Get in your bedroom and hoover, Jeff Bezos."
Is there anything else you want to add about a special interest before we move on? Do you think?
Well, I was just going to talk about the kid down the road because he sort of gave me hope because he's very socially awkward, and you can't. I mean, you can do jokes with my kids. They really get jokes, especially
Mm-hmm.
jokes that are silly or that are based on being annoying or or
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
or
yeah.
repetition. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
really get that, and it's it. They're great to have around to if we're doing something funny. But the kid down the road is more sort of classically what you think of, sort of kind of Sheldon Cooper autistic, and
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
he doesn't get jokes at all. I mean,
Okay. Okay.
it's like firing ping pong balls at a tank. There's no point.
He's impervious to humour.
Yes, but because he's upset, he's really into mechanics. So it's like you can see how useful that is. It's like he can change tires. You know, he can get a car on its ramps. He can take the exhaust system off. He can change the
Yeah, well,
sparks.
that's kind of where I'm hoping that their sort of obsession with special interests kind of takes them then, because it doesn't, not just from a social perspective, which has a value, but also from a career perspective. If there's some, like, because I know that particularly with Jay, if there's something he's interested in, he will throw himself into it. He will do everything he can to immerse himself in it and learn about it. And if he can get into a career that involves that, then he's going to be absolutely flying.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just don't know how we do that. I mean, he wants to be a blacksmith. I'm not sure.
Well, it sounds like he's going to have to be an academic, doesn't it? Because then he can just, you know, you learn
That's basically
stuff.
what
You you
academia is,
you
isn't it?
you unload your learning onto other people, and then you go on a sabbatical where all you're doing is filling your head with more stuff at the university's expense.
Do you think that academia is just littered with autistics who've basically found a special interest? Like, well, what am I going to do with this? I'm just going to talk
Well,
about it
I
to
was
other people.
certainly taught by quite a few autistics. I know that for a
Yeah,
fact.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's, like, what do you want to do every day? I just want to talk about the same thing. I just want to learn more about that same thing and then talk about that thing to other people and then read things that other people have written about the same thing.
Yeah. The only problem comes when they have to read other people's take on all this stuff that you know everything about and not just be completely scathing.
Very often they are, with my experience of university at least.
Yes.
It's not all rubbish.
So, this next section of the show is the "It's Not All Rubbish" bit, where we look at some of the more positive aspects of parenting neurodivergent kids. So, the first one I wanted to introduce was Neurodiversity Champions. Liam, have you got anyone that you wish to kind of nominate as a neurodiversity champion?
Yeah, so we went to Simply Great Media down the road, which has just become a public interest company, but they've only just started, and it was like, can we afford to send them here to learn stuff? And as soon as they walked through
So,
the door, they were like, "Oh wow, this is like paradise. There's people."
so what is it?
Well, it's kind of like a learning center for.
Hmm.
I don't think it's for neurodivergent kids, but a lot of neurodivergent kids were in there, and they were actually
Right.
creating apps. I mean, actually, it was
Oh,
like
cool.
it was a
So like
factory
hands-on
floor.
learning.
Yeah, and they were actually, doing the coding, doing the whole thing, then seeing how it worked, and one of them was making an app where you had to roll a marble through a maze of hazards, and
Yeah.
it was a gyroscopic control. So he was trying to get the gyroscopic control right so that you could move the marble in the right way, and they were absolutely fascinated. But he took us into this room, which was just he had sort of half repaired computers all in
Yeah.
benches all around the room, and it had been absolutely pissing it down outside. So they were soaking wet. So they were just staring, leaning over all these wide open computers, dripping water into the electronics. And we're like, no, stay away. And then we tried to get them to sit on these swivel seats, and they were just like throwing themselves around the room, just like because the chairs had wheels, and it was like, oh God,
Oh.
no. And it was just like, but he wasn't phased at all. That's why we thought that was a great place, because he just wasn't
Oh,
bothered.
so he's totally
Totally not
sorry.
bothered. And he in the
Oh,
end he
that's
said, "I
good.
think you'd better go before your dad explodes." But
Oh,
he
right.
wasn't
So
bothered.
you were the problem,
Yeah,
not
I
them.
was exploding on his behalf because I thought, sometimes you think, I don't want to come across as one of those parents who are just oblivious to their children being arseholes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Constantly.
you think,
That's
I'm
my
gonna
default
I'm
setting.
gonna have a go at them, and then people will see that I am suffering and that I am on. I do appreciate that this isn't right.
Yeah. But you went too far the other way.
Well, I just wondered how many thousands of pounds worth of electronics they were destroying by just, you know, leaning on them with their
Yeah.
soggy
Yeah.
goons. But they were like, "Oh, there's a Dreamcast from 1983," and I don't know, probably getting the year wrong. They would correct me on that, but they had all this antique legacy soft hardware, which they were totally into. So he was quite impressed that they knew what everything was, and
Oh, that sounds great.
that's a joystick that worked on this system, and he was like, "Yeah, you're right." Um, so
Excellent.
he was great. So they become a public something company. I don't know. So they've got funding, which means that
Okay. Cool.
I think I can afford to send my kids there, which is
Ah,
just their idea
amazing.
of heaven.
Great. All right. Well,
Um,
what I'm going to do for all of these neurodiversity champions is I'm going to put them in the show notes against the podcast, so other people can look at them and go and drip in their computers.
yes.
Tiny wins.
The next section I want to talk about is tiny wins, and whether you have any tiny. I call it tiny wins. I think I need a new name for it because they're not tiny wins in our world. I think in a neurotypical world, something that is seen as like a little win, but actually, in our setup, it's a major victory. And I like to kind of celebrate those wherever possible. Have you got any tiny wins you want to share with us?
Yeah. Well, yes. This is only the second week that I've been teaching them, and I've been deciding that I'm not gonna sit down and do right. We're doing history, or right. We're doing English. We're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna read two books at the same time, and we're gonna find themes that overlap, and we're gonna go wherever that takes us. And so it's been very free form. Like today, we were talking about the Aztecs, and well, we started on Watership Down, but it led to the Aztecs. It led to the Tower of Babel, the creation myth. Uh, yeah, it went to all sorts of places. Um, But it was interesting because, I mean, my kids can't sit still sometimes, but I've realised, and this is quite a win, because I realised, because today they wouldn't stay in the seats and they were jumping up and down and they were running around. And I was like, oh, for God's sake, sit in your seats. I'm trying to teach you. But then I realised that they do that in two situations. They do it when they're bored, but they also do it when they're excited. And in this
Yeah,
case,
yeah.
they were actually doing it because they were really excited about what we were talking about. And
Oh, wicked.
they wanted to make a point by expressing themselves and running around the table.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's fantastic. Yeah, so you've got an instant feedback on what you're saying is
Yeah,
actually
and it was getting
going
quite
down.
animated because I was just pushing this point with Twin B, and I was saying, "Yeah, but why is something against the law? Because it's wrong. But who says it's wrong? Because the law does. But where does the law come from?" And it was like, even if by sheer repetition we're gonna, and even if we never get there, even if we do just go around in circles, then at least he's had the experience of being put on a spot and being asked, like, you need to drill into this, you need to find out what your reason is. um and twin one had lots of ideas, and he was saying, but surely you can see, he couldn't see why twin two couldn't see it, and he was going, but surely you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
see
yeah,
this,
yeah.
and surely you can see that. And he was going, no, it's just stupid. He kept saying it was stupid. So we've got this defense mechanism of it's just stupid. It is the law, and that's it. And so I made them do homework on why should I not be allowed to just stab Twin B for fun?
Which I don't think you'll find on many curriculums.
Well, exactly. And yesterday we talked about the British Empire, which is on no curriculums. It's like, and that's an interesting thing to talk about, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
you
it
can
really
start
is
the.
actually. Yeah,
We
yeah, yeah.
used to own a quarter of the world, and no one ever talks about it at school. Why do you think that
Yeah,
is?
yeah. Well, not at schools anyway.
No, no.
Do you are you taking submissions for your homeschool, Liam? 'Cause I fancy dropping in. Sounds great. Our tiny win was that Otto had um, had a tooth come out, and he
Yes,
managed to completely conquer his anxiety about the tooth fairy.
right.
Because previously the tooth fairy freaked him the fuck out, and why not?
Well, of
Why wouldn't
course.
like?
What's he doing with all those teeth?
There was literally that question. What is the tooth fairy do? What do they do with them? I don't know. I don't know, Otto. Um, so there was a lot of like he wasn't able to sleep very easily previously because I think part of him wanted to catch the tooth fairy, and part of him didn't want to fall asleep for the fear of what the tooth fairy might do. It
Right,
was also, I think, linked to the fact that I assisted with him removing his tooth last time, and I probably shouldn't have done that.
right.
Because it's like it's wobbly. It was just hanging off. I could like see it hanging off. It's like I'll just pull it,
Yeah.
and that has it was a bit more
Traumatized
firmly.
him.
It
Yeah.
was a bit more firmly attached than I
No, you
intended.
don't do that.
Uh,
Just give him a bag of toffees.
yeah, yeah, I should have done that. But so that sort of traumatized him as well, and I think he sort of linked that all with the tooth fairy. But this time round, he lost his tooth. It came out. He was delighted, and it was absolutely like hassle free. The tooth fairy did not cause him any anxiety, and I'm taking that as a tiny win.
What the flip?
Well, I've had a couple of what the flip moments this in the past few weeks. One is Jay has got a new favorite word, and he walked in and he proudly announced, he said, "My favourite word is hubris." And
Hubris
I
is a
went,
very good
"Oh,
word.
okay." Yeah. It's like, "Do you know what it means, Jay?" And he went, "Yep, it means excessive pride or self-confidence." I was like, "Very good, very good." And then I went, "Do you think you might sometimes be guilty of hubris, Jay?" And without a beat, he just looked at me and, "How dare you? I am just excellent at everything."
Right, yes.
It's like, okay. So that was that was pleasant. Another what the flip moment was, because Jay is very particular about the type of crisps that he will, or about food. we have to sort of very gently try him on new stuff to see if it'll stick. And I put some new crisps in his lunchbox, and he came back from school and I went, "How are the new crisps, Jay?" And he went, "They taste like cheese dust in the future when all proper food resources have gone."
Right.
Like, that's a no then, is it? Okay.
You're giving him
Okay,
Soylent
thanks.
Green.
Yeah, so that was a no. Yeah, and the only other one was we went to a playground. This is before this was on a weekend. We went to a playground, just me, Jay, and Otto, and I made the mistake of doing that thing. You know, when they're really little and you want to go and they don't want to go. It's like, come on, we're going. Come on, let's just go. And I gave him all of the, the usual build up. I was like, 10 minutes, we're going to go. 5 minutes, we're going to go. Okay, after this game you're doing, then we're going to go. And he was just refusing to go. And then I made the mistake of doing that thing that you do with toddlers where you go, well, I'm just going to go then and leave you here.
Yeah.
And that is the worst thing you could do to Jay, because he's like, sweet, I am gonna live in the playground. And he you could see he was already planning it. He was like, okay, so I'm gonna live. He'd already got it worked out. He was gonna live in the tunnel because it was like protected from the rain and the wind. And he was gonna like start a vegetable patch over like by the little trees there. And he basically planned it all out. He was going to live in the playground like Stig of the Sandpit. So
Right.
I had to literally just pick him up and carry him out, and he found that funny, so it was okay. Now, one of the other things I want to do, we've got Poetry Corner coming up. That's going to be the final thing that we do. But before I do that, I always like to ask my guests to tell me the best thing about their kids, because we spend so much time not moaning about them, but sort of focusing on the challenges that they have, that I want to kind of spend a little bit of time just looking at what the best thing about each of your kids is.
It's hard to think of something, but not because there isn't anything, because there's lots of things. I mean, they are faultlessly polite. They are very sort of endearing. Um, you know, they it doesn't matter who comes around the house. They just want to. They're sort of like a dog when the bell goes and they're like, "Who's this? Who's this? It's someone great. It's bound to be someone great." They're kind of like that. Whoever comes around, they just want to talk their ear off.
Oh.
And when you just get a sudden blast of it, and you're like, "Oh my god, they're very friendly." I know. No, I really love that, because I was never. They're like me in many ways, but I was never like that. I was like, "Oh god, there's a strange person in the house. I must
So they're
hide."
super sociable.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Whether the other person is into it or not, it's like, I've never met you before. Let me unload this ton of info onto you.
Nice. That sounds
I
really
met
fun.
once because he'd just done a gig for me. Do you know John Robertson, the
Yes, of
comedian?
course. Yeah.
He came round, and they just got out of bed to see who it was, and it just so happened he knows all about the early days of Sonic and Mario, and who worked on the first games, and which
Okay.
studio in Japan did the music, and they were just like, "Wow, can you stay here forever? Is he staying overnight, Dad?" "No, he's got to go catch a bus." "Oh, can he stay though?" And it was like, oh my god.
Oh, that's lovely though.
Poetry Corner.
Okay, the last section of the show is called Poetry Corner, for reasons that are very obvious, I would imagine. I've written a poem. I will do that sometimes. Occasionally, when the muse strikes me, I'll choose to write a poem and then I'll share it on this podcast if you'll indulge me. This poem is about special interests purely because I had a particularly trying session of being spoken at by my child, and I decided to write something down about it. So that is what this is. So this is my poem about special interests. Through my dealings with autistics, there's one thing that I have learned. Is that they can't conceal their feelings, at least where my kid is concerned. And sometimes I will talk to him assuming he'll engage, but when I look up at his face, it's clear he's on a different page. I'll think my anecdote's a zinger, my delivery magnetic, but my child will just stare blankly back, entirely apathetic. There's no mutual discussion, there's no banter forth and back. He has no great love of repartee and gives no hoots for chat. Now, I used to be offended by such one-way conversation, but through time I've learned just why my child can't do reciprocation. There's a very simple reason why my discourse is a flop. You see, he's not concerned with what I say, but merely when I'll stop. Because as soon as I have finished, he has learned that it's a sign that it's now his turn to have his say as he let me have mine. Instead, he has a burning need to get things off his chest, and every chance he gets, he'll talk about his special interest. To the subject that was being discussed, it bears zero relation. It's a monolithic monologue sans social lubrication. It could be sharks or space or Pokemon or Jacobean fashion. What's striking isn't what it is, but the heartfelt surge of passion. When I conversed, his shoulders slumped, his face was pale and dour, but now he's energised like he's been switched to turbo power. This child, who moments earlier looked very bored indeed, now espouses tales of mighty Zeus and talks at lightning speed. He'll blast through facts and figures, minute details fundamental. He won't care if I'm listening, I'm merely incidental. And although it's nice if I'm on board his speeding verbal train, it's more important he can speak to get it off his brain. Now, there's often an assumption that I share his passion too, so I smile and nod and sometimes ask a question out the blue. And although it is exhausting listening to his tirade, if I look beneath the surface, I should never feel dismayed. I've tried hard to teach compassion, and for empathy I strive. I've implored him to be kind and thoughtful all of his young life. I tear my hair out if he's rude or shows his selfish side. To teach him basic empathy, I've tried and tried and tried, but perhaps I'm wrong to try and pin his worth on social graces, when there's evidence his loving side resides in different places. And perhaps if I look harder for a deep sense of connection, I will see that he has a different way of showing his affection. As I see the effervescence in my sweet autistic boy when he launches into Zelda chat with such unbridled joy, it is in these sacred moments where his special interest shines that I need to stop and take a breath to read between the lines. Because this knowledge that he's sharing, that he's bursting to impart, that's the foremost precious thing to him. That's how he shares his heart. So next time I'm interrupted by an avalanche of facts, I should just sit still and listen, so he knows I love him back. So that is it for this episode of Neuroshambles. All that remains for me to say is Liam Mullone, thank you for being our guests.
Thank you.
And to the audience, thanks for listening. And check us out on the socials, on Threads and Reddit and Facebook and Instagram, but not X. And if you want to suggest any topics you want us to talk about, please email hello@neuroshambles.com. It'd be great to hear from you if you've got anything to say about the show, and also if you could like and subscribe in your podcast application. That will also help to gain a bit of notoriety, let's say, in the podcast community. That'd be great, and spread the word. But for now, have a nice life.